You know, journal editors, they're basically the gatekeepers of all of science. These are the people with the power to decide what new research sees the light of day and what gets left in the dark. They hold the keys to the kingdom. But you have to wonder, what's the personal cost of that power? What does it actually do to you to stand guard at the gates of knowledge? Well, we're about to find out. This quote from Russ Vince, it just nails it. By picking what gets published, editors aren't just organizing today's information. They are literally sculpting the future. Think about that for a second. They decide which ideas get a chance to grow and which ones just wither away. That is a huge, almost unbelievable amount of influence. So that brings us to the real mystery here. You'd think, right, that being exposed to all the newest, most cutting-edge research would turn these editors into intellectual superheroes. But on the other hand, the pressure, the sheer amount of work, it has to be crushing. So does the job build them up, or does it break them? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to look at two theories that are complete opposites. All right, first up, we have what's called the learning hypothesis. The idea here is that being an editor, while intense, is like a trial by fire. It forges stronger, sharper, and just plain smarter researchers. This theory sees the job not as a burden, but as this amazing, career-defining chance to learn and grow. And here's the key to that idea. There's no editor's school. You don't get a textbook. All the learning is informal. It happens on the job. It's the kind of knowledge you pick up in the trenches, by wrestling with new ideas, by going back and forth with expert reviewers, and by making these huge, tough calls every single day. It's learning by doing, but at the absolute highest level. And every single part of the process is a chance to learn. Okay, step one, you're reading every paper that comes in. Maybe you're an expert in management, but you get a paper with some wild new statistical method. Just to find the right people to review it, you have to get yourself up to speed. And then, at the end, in step 3, you're trying to make sense of feedback from 3 brilliant experts who all completely disagree with each other. You get a masterclass in what makes a great argument and what makes a weak one. And look, this isn't just a theory. You can hear it from the people who've actually done the job. For this editor, Angela Denisi, it wasn't a chore. It was the single greatest learning experience of his entire career. You can just feel the pride in those words. It's a pretty compelling argument that the job is this incredible engine for growth. But there's another side to this coin, a much, much darker side. Our second theory, the burnout hypothesis, paints a totally different picture. It says the job doesn't build you up, it grinds you down. It's less of a forge creating something new and more of a relentless hamster wheel that just leads to pure exhaustion. So, what are we really talking about when we say burnout? Because the word gets thrown around a lot, right? This isn't just having a stressful week. It's a deep, long-term state of being emotionally, physically, and mentally tapped out. It's when you feel completely depleted and you start to feel cynical about the very work you used to be passionate about. And if you want to see the path to burnout, just look at this number. One former editor figured he was spending 20 to 30 hours a week on the journal. Now remember, that is not his main job. That's a second unpaid job on top of his actual career as a professor and researcher. That's just a staggering amount of extra work. And the research points to this perfect storm of classic job stressors. First, you've just got the sheer volume of it all, a never-ending flood of papers. Then there's role conflict. The journal is always at war with your own research, your students, your family. And finally, role ambiguity. You're thrown into this incredibly complex job with zero formal training on how to actually do it. Wow. This anecdote right here, it just makes that idea of role conflict painfully real. The job doesn't care about weekends, it doesn't care about holidays, it doesn't even care about a trip to the Galapagos. That image of an editor hunting for Wi-Fi in some beautiful Italian village while their partner's trying to have a vacation, it's kind of funny, but it's also incredibly sad. It just shows you how this role can bleed into every single corner of your life. So there you have it, our two competing stories side by side. Is being an editor a transformative learning experience that makes you a better researcher, or is it an exhausting, high-stress nightmare that ultimately crushes your productivity? Two totally opposite predictions. So which one is it? A career booster or a career killer? Well, to settle this, we have to go beyond the stories and the anecdotes. We need to look at the cold, hard data. So let's see what the detectives found. A team of researchers decided to crack this case once and for all. They basically became data detectives, launching this massive investigation to track the publishing careers of dozens of editors over their entire professional lives just to see what really happens. And this was no small-time operation. I mean, look at this investigation file. They tracked 58 different editors from 6 of the absolute best journals in their field. They collected data from a 50-year span. And for evidence, they looked at every single peer-reviewed article these people ever published. It really doesn't get more thorough than that.
So after digging through decades and decades of publishing records, the researchers were ready. They had their verdict. And what they found? Well, let's just say it was not what most people expected. The data showed a trend that was clear, consistent, and frankly, pretty shocking.
Okay, this chart right here tells the whole story. Look at this. Before they become an editor, their research productivity is high and steady. Then, while they're an editor, it actually nudges up a bit. They're probably finishing projects they started before. But then, look what happens the second they step down. Their productivity absolutely tanks. It's cut by more than half. That isn't a dip, that's a cliff. The data is it's undeniable. That massive, sustained drop in productivity right after they leave the job is a textbook sign of burnout. Yes, they might be learning a lot, but the data shows that the exhaustion just completely overwhelms it. The stress of the role takes a serious toll, leaving these brilliant people struggling to do their own work. But here it is, the single most staggering number in this whole study. How long does it take for them to get back to normal, for their research output to climb back to where it was before they took the job? 10 years. A full decade. And that's the minimum recovery time. For 10 years, some of the smartest people in their fields are basically operating at half speed. So why does this all matter? I mean, this isn't just some quirky fact about academia. This is a really profound story about the hidden price of these high-stress, service-oriented jobs and the cost that not just the individual, but their entire field ends up paying. This leads to the study's single biggest piece of advice. If you're thinking about becoming an editor, don't do it for yourself. The evidence is clear. It will probably hurt your own research career. You have to go into it seeing it as an act of service, as a kind of sustained volunteerism that you're doing for the good of the community. The paper uses this really powerful analogy to explain the true cost. When an editor's productivity crashes for a decade, it's like one of a company's most valuable, most experienced employees just quitting. All that incredible wisdom they gain from reading thousands of papers and seeing the future of their field, it's not being turned into new research. It's just lost. It's a massive waste for everyone. And that leaves us with a really critical question, one that goes way beyond science journals. In every field, there are people in these thankless, high-stress gatekeeper roles. And if the very people we count on to guide and shape knowledge are being systematically burned out, then we have to ask ourselves, how do we support them better, and how do we stop all of their hard-earned wisdom from just evaporating into thin air?